Well, good evening, and it's great to be back with everybody. We are looking at the second half of episode 1 of season 2 of The Chosen. If you remember, last week we were together. I hope that we are together. And we began episode 1 of season 2, started out with John taking his gospel, sitting with his mother, with Mary, and with doing a little review, and then did a little interview. It was a little bit of strange kind of flash forward, flash back. So we're actually in the flashback now from that period where they are out 60 years writing down the or 12 years, I guess, beginning the writing down of the Gospels. Why it's 12 years? Why we know that is because James, as usually referred to in the Chosen, Big James has been killed. He's been murdered by Herod. Remember, Stephen was the first martyr of the church, killed by the stoning at the behest or at the facilitation of Saul, before Saul became Paul, at the temple. So at that period, you have Saul, who's gone into Jerusalem, and he's rooting out this subversive Jewish cult, really, this messianic cult. And he finds Stephen. They confront Stephen. Stephen accounts for the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, and because of that, they stone him to death. So he's the first martyr of the church. But James, when James is killed 12 years later, 11 years later from that point, he is the first apostolic martyr. He is the second to die of notoriety. Certainly others have died in the interim, but he is the first of the apostolic martyrs. So what that means is that the church is no longer a Jewish cult. It's no longer within the Jewish community. The Jewish community is not trying to keep Christians out of the temple. The Christian church is now the Christian church. It's become something different. And he is captured and killed by Herod, specifically because he is a part of this other group. And so this season starts with the event is the death of James. They're going to do his funeral, and John is talking with Mary and with the other disciples and hearing the stories and writing it down as he is in the process of recording the gospel of John and moving forward. It's important for us to remember that from last week, because it's going to come full circle all the way around at the end of this episode. Episode 1, season 2 is a bookend episode with John at the beginning writing down what he's known, and then talking to Mary on how he should do this, how he should begin this, how this can happen. And then at the end, it comes full circle as it was being formed in his mind, and then played out as he's writing it down. And we'll hear the flash forward and the flashback are going to come together at the very end. Lots and lots of really important stuff going on here, not the least of which is you all remember that we are in Samaria. Jesus is gone and he's spoken to the Samaritan woman. They have stayed in Samaria, and he is teaching and talking to the city, the people in the city, although they hate each other. You remember James and John?
Did it
And again.
Okay.
Yeah, he's
Lost him again.
exactly what happened last time.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll be doing it if that's going to happen every 10 minutes. You can certainly hop on the other laptop. We have the church one at home.
He says he's doing a reboot.
Should I pause the recording?
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
I just paused it.
All right, sorry about that little computer malfunction. So anyway, let's get started. We have Jesus in Samaria and teaching there, and James and John have been a real thorn in the side, to put it lightly, because they are so prejudiced against the Samaritans. And that's really important because it's going to be a highlight. Now, for you guys that have joined us because of the YouTube rules, I can't show the Chosen. So jump off, pause this right now, and go watch Chosen on. You can look it on YouTube, just about anywhere. And we are starting right at marker 3434. How about that? Easy to remember. Watch it till the end and jump back on, and we'll see you in just a few minutes. I hope everybody is back with us. So what part stood out to you? What was the part that grabbed you? There's so many parts that, oh, you've got to be kidding.
The angry Jesus got me.
Oh, are you guys still there? There. Oh my goodness. It went black again. I don't know if that happened to you, but mine was just, all right. The angry Jesus, you said?
Well, the perturbed Jesus. Yes.
Jesus. So that was when he was talking to Big James and John after the spitting incident, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, to be called unworthy by Jesus Christ would be a kind of daunting, would be a bad day.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would agree with that. What else?
I like the way Jesus teases him.
Yeah.
He was teasing John there in the temple.
Yeah.
It's such a good humor, and it's an innocent humor, isn't it? He's trying to, he's teaching people to see where they are, but then he's bringing it back around to being a human moment, not an evil moment or a bad moment. He gives forgiveness at the same time that he corrects.
I like the perspective that it puts on the disciples, that they don't know these things. This is how they live, that we know to be humble. We know these factors. Most of them we know, and that how we should act. We just choose to follow them or ignore them. But the disciples didn't know you were supposed to be humble towards all, and that you're supposed to love your enemies. So it's interesting to see their perspective and their life of how they were more learning as they went.
Yep. Remember that the two prevailing views of what the Messiah was going to be was one who had miracle abilities like Moses, or had military abilities like David. And in both of those cases, whether it was a Moses Messiah or a Davidic Messiah, the Messiah would thrash the other people. So James and John are waiting for the Messiah that's going to come and thrash everybody.
Yeah.
You know. The man's wife in the field. I'm going to call him the man of the field now. The broken leg. Didn't she ask the question that everybody asks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're still asking it.
We're still asking it. There's that book that came out, Why Do Bad Things Happen to Good People?
Yeah.
That was going around in the 70s, I guess, and 80s and 90s and 2000s, and people still go back to it. And they don't, even with 30 years worth of reading that book, they still don't get it, because we don't like the answer. We want knowing who the Messiah is to mean that all the pain and suffering is going to end. And it doesn't work that way. Yeah. Jesus' answer, I think, was great. He says, I came to preach the good news. And the expectations of the people for what they want God to do, they have to learn what it is that God is doing what God is doing, and not the other way around. So it's another big macro lesson that she helps to name for everybody else. Ha! What'd you think about the story, the field man, about his life? Did you guys got that right away?
Yeah, the Good Samaritan.
A good Samaritan, right? Luke 10:25 through 37. You know, this has been misquoted so many times, and they caught it. I couldn't believe it when they did it in here, because so many people say it's the parable of the Good Samaritan. But if you go back and reread Luke 25, he doesn't say that. He says, let me tell you a story. He doesn't say it's a parable, which stands it out as unusual from the other stories, other because it always says Jesus told this parable.
Yeah.
Is what was the name, Melanik? Was he in the gospel or was he made up?
Field man,
Yes.
he's made up. Yeah, but again, I love it the way that the in the series they are putting together the stories that we're familiar with, our real life, our exposure to Jesus with real life events. You know, I'm going to keep going back to this over and over again. When Jesus was sitting by, and when he was camping and he had the kids,
Mhm.
and he was telling them the stories, and we're sitting here saying, wait a minute, that's not where he told that story. He told that story in Jerusalem in the gospel. I remember it was last Sunday. But of course, the revelation to us is that because we have the story written down when John heard it the first time, doesn't mean Jesus didn't tell it before that. It's just we've got it written down by John because that's when John heard it. You know, which also this episode tips its hat to. Remember how he's talking to Mary at the beginning, and she says, "Isn't Matthew going to write that down?" And he said, "I'm sure he will."
Yeah.
Quarterly, you know. So you have this episode tips its hat to the different gospels, and it also puts into play what John is saying. I knew things that Matthew doesn't know because I came before Matthew did. So this gives us an indication why the gospels in some ways are very different, because the gospelers had exposure to Christ before or aside from each other, and why they are the same, because at times they were all together when these events took place.
I love how John is sort of composing what we know will become his gospel and even getting tips from Jesus, you know, how to out like a little outline from the Lord of how he's going to compose his gospel.
Yeah, very neat. So what was the problem with James and John? What was the lesson? We know what the lesson is from Jesus's perspective, right? He talked about seeds. He talked about planting and creating things that were going to ripple down through generations and spread the word and change the world. But there's another lesson that is actually a lesson that he's been teaching since the beginning of the series. And it is a lesson that Peter really displays when he is prepared to cheat the Romans and turn in or turn in the merchants. It is the problem that Mary has in her response to her possession. It is the responses all along the way. Nicodemus, when Nicodemus is trying to draw closer to God, and then again when Nicodemus doesn't go with them on the trip. It is the same lesson over and over and over, and that lesson is that the person is concerned with the wrong thing. It goes back into a lot of other areas where you say you're asking the wrong question, and if you're asking the wrong question, then you're concerned about the wrong thing. So in this instance, the determination of why they were doing what they were doing was and how they were doing it. The concern they had was about them being the best, being the favorites, being the ones. You know, they're all pride-filled. Aha, we're the favorites of Jesus. Their concern was making Jesus happy. Their concern was elevating themselves. Their concern was not for the field man, not for the people. Their concern, and bigger than that, their concern was not for the person and the ministry that Jesus was showing forth to the world. So Jesus is stopping and basically saying to them, you're thinking too small. Your concern is about this little thing. It is a concern. It is a viable concern if you don't change your perspective. If you stay where you are, then that will be your concern, and it'll always be your concern, and that will stop you from growing and becoming the person you're supposed to be. You've got to get a bigger perspective. You have to change your concern, change what you are focused on, not on your hatred of these people in a region that did something bad to you. Just like Jesus said, you have to get away from that, and you have to look bigger at what is the purpose of God, what's God's intention, and then put your heart and your mind and your spirit behind that. And only if you do that will you grow, will you become. And of course, Jesus put a top hat on it by saying, and it's going to change the world. And that's the only thing that will, right? Let's see. Now that's I love that when, as Jenny said, being chastised by Jesus, ooh, bad day, you know, where he comes out and he says, this is the message. This is it. All that other stuff you're carrying around with you, that's not it. This is it. This is the message. And that is, you're not worthy. Like, right? Who wants to hear that? But that's the whole point, isn't it? He's saying that your self-inflated idea, your idea of yourself as worthy, is the same idea that the people have that you're condemning and wanting to burn with heavenly fire. They think they're worthy too. They're not worthy either, but neither are you. Your vision and their vision is the same vision. You have the same vision about yourself, and because of that, you have the same hatred and condemnation of each other. And by that vision, you are both unworthy. So I have come to teach this lesson. This is the message, that through me and the way I see you, not the way you see each other, the way I see you makes you worthy. Only in me are you worthy. It's actually a very hopeful message. It gets us out of the mid. I don't know if you guys heard me talking the other day about, where was it, Jenny, when we were talking about the repainted Jesus on the ceiling? What group was that? Was that church?
Yes, it's on the cleanup day.
It was on cleanup day. There was a church that I went into that repainted, had a blonde, blue-eyed Jesus up on the ceiling, a huge ceiling, right? And they got a $100,000 painter that they couldn't afford over from overseas to come and repaint this incredible thing. Made the news, made the national news. And when they repainted blonde, pasty white skin, blue-eyed Jesus with the little white cherubs flying around, because it was an AME Zion church, they painted him a black Afro Jesus with little black cherubs flying around. And the pastor was very emotive with me, saying, you know, great, he's great, look, it's great. And I felt very, very sad, because I said, don't you see what you've done? You've taken one lie and you've traded it for another lie. And so you had the blonde, blue-eyed Jesus on the ceiling, and that blonde, blue-eyed Jesus, who was a lie, was the Jesus of the white man. And so you had a painter come and paint over that and make him the black African Jesus, who now belongs to you. He's the black Jesus, he's yours. But by doing that, you've missed the point that Jesus is neither the black man or the white man. And if you painted him as the Palestinian man in the middle, like he was, then that Jesus could have been the healing Jesus for both of the two groups. You could say to the white group, you don't own him, and the white group can say to the black group, you don't own him, and the two groups can come together and say, this man is the man for both of us, who doesn't care what color we are or where we're from. This is the Jesus that will unite us one to the other, which I think, of course, it's not a mistake. God didn't make a boo-boo by coming the way he came. And the pastor got very mad at me and asked me to leave. So this is the opportunity, I think, that Jesus constantly comes to. Says, you know, this is the opportunity that you now have to accept something that's neither theirs or yours. This is the perspective in the middle, and that perspective is always God's. I have to let go of my thing and make it, and holding on to it, saying I'm right because it's mine, and accept God's thing. And if everybody did that, then there would be no hate and discontent and problems in the world. We wouldn't be, drawing bridges around or walls around ourselves because we got to keep our thing right and defend it at all costs. And that's why Jesus is saying, this is what I'm here for. This is what I'm teaching. This is what I'm telling you. We're almost, we have to leave. I know we're over because of my computer, but did you catch at the end when he calls John in to help him choose the book? You remember, did you catch what he said? Any of the things he said? It's like 5, all these little Easter eggs. Did you catch any of the things he said? Did anything stand out?
Yeah, when he talked about the beginning, he said, "What a wonderful memory."
Yeah. Wasn't that great? One of my favorite memories. Like my thing. So right before that, do you remember what he said when John said, he said, can you choose? And he said, after what happened today and yesterday, I'm not worthy.
Yeah.
And he said, no man is worthy. And what did Jesus say?
I'm just a man.
I'm just a man. Right. So that's one. That's one. I'll give you that one in a second. And what was the second thing he said? He then turned to John and said something. You remember what it was? He said, I am who I am.
Who I am.
And where does that from?
God answering Moses.
That's what God said out of the burning bush. In fact, that's the name of God. I am.
No, that's what God says when Moses, he's telling Moses is all locked up because the people are whining, and Moses said, I need a name. I need to tell them who sent me with all this junk you want me to tell them. And God says, I am who I am.
That's it. And so Yahweh is the letters, not the consonant, not the vowels, but the consonants that form the word I am who I am. I am. So when Jesus turns to him and looks at him and says, I am who I am, you saw that look on John's face like, holy crap, because you see the Jewish people can't or won't, they won't even say the name I am. That's why they have Adonai. That's why they have Elohim. That's why they have these other words, but they will not say the name of God, I am. It's just too sacred. But here Jesus turns to him and just flat out says, I am. So John's heart is open, because at that moment, if it wasn't, John would have gone into a fit. He would have freaked out. Nobody in the world would say what Jesus just said. And that's why C.S. Lewis at this point says in his writings, either Jesus is who he said he was, or he's a raving lunatic. And there is nothing in between, because there's no sane Jewish person, maybe no sane person says I am God. I mean, don't we lock people up for that? Yeah. And back then they would easily kill them and think they were insane, and then they would kill them. So for Jesus to say the Gospels over and over in different ways, I am God, I am who I am, and say it right before Pilate, right? That's what got him crucified. I am who I am, he said. He said, some people say you are the Son of God. Who are you? He said, I am. Pilate, or not Pilate, sorry. Caiaphas tears his robe, his prayer shawl. So, all right, so we have to end the favorite memory I am who I am. Last one is, did you notice that there was only one miracle in this whole section? And who is it for?
The farmer.
Field man, right?
Field man.
Field man. And you know what it turns out to be? It's a secret. No, nobody knows it. They will after he's gone, when the guy starts telling them. But he went into Samaria and remember he said to James and John on the road, they believe in me because of my word, not because of a miracle. They're so hungry for the truth that when I speak it, they recognize it as the truth. They're not looking for something else to prove the word. They hear the word with their heart and their spirit, and they embrace that word. And then, of course, the end, when you've got the reading of Genesis and the start of John's gospel mixed together. Remember I told you at the beginning that these two are going to come back, the flash forward and the flashback. They come together to form this the continuity. Remember, I talk in church all the time about the continuity of Scripture. This is the Gospel of John going all the way through time, 4,000 years back, and locking into the first verse of Genesis. Yeah, it's a perfect handhold. Okay, there we go. Great. Really, thank you guys so much for putting up with my
Thank
computer,
you.
what was going on. I appreciate it. Hope you got as much out of this as I did, and we'll get more if you think about it later on. And we will look forward next week to season 2, episode 2.
Okay.
All right. God bless you all. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a good night. Have a good rest of
Everybody.
everybody.